And I think, Michael, we've talked a lot, too, about exercising our will. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways I think we can exercise our will is by slowing things down.
Oh, man. It's...
Yeah.
Come on, man. I mean, this is the critical ingredient, you know. With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful ends for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson here, hanging out with S.J. Jennings, exploring the kingdom of God, and discovering the wildness of what it is to be learning and enjoying. And I think about this particular subject too, getting away with God. That's a good part two.
Yeah.
You know, getting away with God, part two, and how, that's the subtitle of Exploring More.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
It really is getting away with God and being with God. And so, we tackled some things in part one, and I think in this conversation, SJ, I'm thinking more and more about, let's just talk about how we do that and how our friends and allies could do that. What's that look like for us? You know, we've talked about 3 miles per hour God and walking with Him. We're made for intimacy. I mean, there's a lot of things we could talk about as to why you should do this and how come it's important. But I would love to talk about how we do this. You know, what's that look like? And so, I'm going to flip it over to you. What does getting away with God, look like for you?
I think in the last episode I mentioned something about how you retreat monthly, you retire a certain amount of time. I still can't remember what it was, but it's like this discipline of doing something daily, weekly, monthly, annually, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think the daily routine for me is probably the most challenging one. Because our daily routines tend to be, filled with things. Yeah. And they're a little bit more easy to sidetrack, or get off track. Yeah,
get squeezed.
Yeah. Something comes up, the car has to be dropped off for an oil change.
The routine gets jacked with, and you kind of get thrown off.
The monthly can be that way too. The weekly can be that way, but the annually what we try to work in is, a long weekend or even some vacation time, that's tends to be more structured. Yeah. And so it's easier for that to not to get displaced. But just on a daily basis, I think my point is it just requires a lot more intentionality. Yeah. And so for me, I'll take walks in the morning oftentimes. And if the weather's inclement, I just have this corner that I kind of pull back into. It's a big leather chair. Yeah. There's kind of a soft light, but bright enough to read. Mm-hmm. And I'll do some reading and take some notes. Sometimes I'm not a big journaler, but sometimes I will write down some things that God's talking to me about. Mm-hmm. And recently, one of the disciplines I've kind of undertaken is just to write. So we shared, I think, in the last episode, I think we shared the link to a story about grief that I wrote. And some of that for me is, even though writing can seem daunting, and it certainly has for me, it's an opportunity for me to directly communicate, and it's almost like I'm writing. When I write, I tend to write in a dialogue. So I write,
which is very helpful.
I write out my dialogue with God, and
that's
like
different than a list.
It is.
That's different than writing down
or your interpretation of Genesis 3 or whatever. I mean, it's or even when you journal about some of the harder things you might be dealing with in life. You kind of get into that. God help me with all these things, which is not a bad thing to do.
Right.
But what I'm talking about is more, I've been writing this dialogue between he and I, which is, it's been a fun exploration to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I love the things that you were mentioning and have found some learning and practice, in those, especially about the writing. I think to dive down into some of the details that you were sharing, it's to ponder and to even consider how I'm feeling and how I'm thinking about something.
Yeah.
And to take that pen to paper. I do believe one massive ingredient to getting away with God, time with God, is the ability to slow time down. I like the walk. And so I can take a walk and not necessarily be getting away with God.
Right. You're on the phone or whatever.
Right?
Yeah.
Or with the dogs, I'm not slowing down. And I'm not saying that my heart rate's up. I'm just saying there's something about the intentionality that you mentioned. We were just talking with a friend of ours today about there's a difference between being allowed to do something and being intentional about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And, my dad allowed me to do some things, but when he took a real interest in, like, he could allow me to play baseball. That's different though than him getting a mitt and him getting the balls and bats and saying, let's go do this.
Yeah. I'm thinking about when my dad allowed me to drive the lawn tractor. He was being strategic.
Oh yeah.
So like I would mow the lawn.
Yeah. For a while you don't catch up.
I was like,
this
I get to drive something.
It's a rite of passage until it's not anymore. But that whole, I just think these ideas, and where I really want to go in this idea is he is always with you and you're always with him. What's that look like? And I think that our phones have taught us some good things, and that is I am available all the time.
Yeah.
And there are people who I expect to be available to me all the time.
Yeah.
The closer my circle, the more those texts they come with. Yeah, you if you don't hear from me in a couple hours from a text, you are thinking, what's wrong, man? Is he okay?
Yeah.
He must be tied up. And then it goes 2 more hours.
Right.
And it's like, are you okay? The next text is, and it can.
There's even the one you can do the long press and put the question mark there. Say like, what is going on?
So I think, SJ, about, time away with God, getting away with God, and creating that Brother Lawrence kind of posture. The little monk who practicing the presence of God, this classic Christian little book, that it really is about the observing of he's with me and I'm with him. And getting away has a certain kind of feel to it. I think the mornings are good. And I think a great challenge and practice is the evenings. If you can get 15 minutes before you end the day, it's like tuck in. You tuck in the precious relationships to you. You check on them, even if there was a babysitter, right? You would come in. Is she okay? Is he okay? You look in as a good father, maybe you pray over them while they're sleeping. You're right.
Do the burrito thing.
As a dad, it's the greatest time. They're asleep.
Yes,
So,
don't touch them.
Yeah, don't wake them up. But and then that idea of just saying goodnight to your spouse. So I think about how to shift that mindset of, yes, you can have devotions, you can have quiet times. Those are good things. But time with God. Yeah. Time away with God.
I feel like that's different than practicing the presence of God, right?
There's just that's an attitude, a posture, where He's always available. And I can, but talking with Him, I think is probably what I'm. Yes, He's walking with me, footprints in the sand, the whole, it's all good. But, when you can practice that dialogue, journaling for sure has the ability. I love what you said about conversationally. I'm writing in, my journals, Jesus, what do you think about this? What one of my daughters is going through, or how I'm wrestling with finances, or what is your perspective on, what part of my what part of my kingdom, what part of my life do you want to talk about? Yeah.
Can we talk about how I responded internally to something that guy said the other day? Stuff like that too. Where did that come from? Yeah. What's that about? Why was I so mad? Why did I feel what I felt? I mean, those exploratory questions, man, are it's not, the study isn't bad. And I think we've said that 1,000 times. If we said it once. But to me, it's a place to start. It's the foundational, it's the push-ups, it's the free throws, all that. But to get to the place when in your time alone with God, where you're interacting with Him as your counselor and friend, that's different. And I think that's what you're talking about.
It requires more of me in that I'm really paying attention to my life more. I'm, Robin and I, on our good days, we will, somewhere around dinner or after, so this happens in the morning. This is actually, I just thought of this too in this moment, that what do you got today? Where are you going today?
What's your calendar look like?
Yeah. Who are you meeting with, and that's a great place to just same kind of thing. God, here's who's on my calendar. Here's anything I need to know about what I'm stepping into there, any concerns or cautions or any advanced words. When Dallas Willard has this incredible principle in his book, Hearing God, that basically says, if you're not asking God and listening to God in the small things, the big things are not available to you.
Right.
And so to cultivate that kind of relational intimacy, conversation with God is supposed to be the normal Christian life, says Dallas Willard. That changed my world 15 or so years ago when I was like this, I was hearing from God, and it just makes sense. Being with God and getting away with God is a critical element to that, that he could shout in the storm, but he really does, I think, want more the candlelight and the quiet, the chair in the corner, the walk, and this other idea that we need to talk about is not every thought's your own.
Yeah.
So critical to getting away with God is even learning how to shut this thing at least into second or third gear, how to dial this thing back, how to the funny example of dog and squirrel, squirrel, and just having the ability to be distracted is one thing, and then that's what allows for distraction. We carry so many things that we are, like you said, trying to accomplish, trying to move downfield, trying to get closer to being finished. Mm-hmm. And you know how once you get one finished, there's the other 3 and then the next 2 that you're picking up and stuff. So, but I think in that practicing of his presence is a quieter, more still space, and the ability to stand still on those walks, breathe. You don't really recognize how shallow you might be breathing until you start thinking about your breathing.
Oh, man. Yeah, I got a story about that. When I first started seeing my physical therapist, who's been my physical therapist now probably for almost 3 years, shout out to Vicky, but I was laying on the table and she's like, "Why aren't you breathing?" And I go, internally, I kind of go,
"I'm breathing."
I wouldn't be here if I wasn't breathing.
Right.
What are you talking about? So then externally I said that. And she said, "You're just kind of breathing to exist. You're not breathing deep." And I was like, "Huh, so show me how." And then she gave me like this whole book on breathing,
Yeah.
And it's so funny how, when things are brought to your attention and you start to learn the way things work, how much more conscious I am.
Yeah.
The other day I was in a kind of a heated discussion with Sherry about something. I wasn't mad at her. I was pretty fired up about something else. And she just looked at me and she goes, "You need to breathe." And I realized I was just breathing enough air in to survive because I was so tense.
Worked up, yep.
So the breathing is important, I think. And when I think about the going on the walks, because you brought it up again, something I started doing recently was when I take my walk, I take a basketball.
Really?
Because it makes it a little more fun for me. Like if I want it to be fun and more in the vein of exercise. So I'll walk up and down the street bouncing a basketball around.
I didn't
try
know
to
that.
use my left hand, use my right. I don't do between the legs and all that stuff. I'm more of a, lineman, defensive end than a basketball player.
I got to add this, in my boyhood Schwinn days, I'm talking 5th, 6th grade, I used to pedal my bike and dribble.
Oh, yeah.
On
the way to the court or whatever.
It was just another exercise in my training to become like John Havlicek and Pete Maravich, my heroes. Back then. Anyway,
but hand-eye coordination, like especially as you get older, I know, some of that stuff can start to slip off. So I'm like, well, when I'm walking, I'll just take a basketball with me. When I have the basketball, I haven't gotten to the point where I can have a conversation with God and dribble the basketball. Right. Because that's
second
just
nature.
I'm just, and I'm exercising. I'm trying to learn how to do that better and all that and make the walk more interesting. When I want to spend time with God, I don't do that. I don't bring it with me.
That's a great, yes.
I think, Michael, we've talked a lot too about exercising our will. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways I think we can exercise our will is by slowing things down.
Oh man,
come
on, man. I mean, this is the critical ingredient, and I definitely want to, I want to talk about that on the second half. I just want to make the second half all about that. That's our subtitle.
Okay.
And so let's take a time out.
Yeah.
Mr. Ball Dribbler. Let's I love that story. I did not know that. And so, and we'll come right back on the Exploring More podcast where getting away with God, time with God, and a practice, what that looks like. So we'll be right back in just a minute.
Hi, I'm Robin Thompson.
And I'm Sherry Jennings.
We are so glad you're joining us for this journey, where we're going to share with you some of the things that we are most passionate about. They're things that have changed our lives and continue to transform us as we journey deeper into our stories, as we explore more of the heart of God, His kingdom, and our place in it, deepening our intimacy with God and with each other as we journey.
Mm-hmm. Robin, I am so loving journeying with you, with Dana, and all the women's team at Zoweh. Since returning from my first deepening weekend in 2010, this is the resource I've been waiting for. I've so wanted to share this with my friends, that goodness of my time away with God.
I also think of the deeper water of my own heart and soul that I want to be willing to enter into. I don't want to remain content with staying in the shallows.
What it did was it
opened up a space for me to be real and authentic with the names that I've put on top of my heart, on myself, and to rewrite those stories in my heart, to go backwards. And so it allowed me to step closer to Jesus, to walk into his arms.
Practically speaking, each session consists of a video you'll watch together. Then you'll move into conversation with questions in the journal workbook, moving into deeper spaces together. So we are inviting you on the deepening journey, that you will experience and discover more of the heart of God and explore your own hearts and stories. As we do this, it's our hope and desire that your friendship and ours will deepen as we walk in this together.
Go to thedeepeningjourney.com for more details.
Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast, and shout out to the Zoweh women and the Deepening Weekend. I think you just heard an ad about that. Great job, Zoweh team, creating an environment for women to get away with God, to spend some time. And I hope it's not a spoiler, but SJ, it's the highlight and a beautiful commitment we've made at our weekends to give men and women collectively, I think it's about 6 hours of time alone with God, broken up in these 30-minute increments.
Plus the free time they can take too.
And the free time's a whole other space.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're a woman, or if you're someone who knows a woman, if you know or have a wife, daughters, mothers, I can't recommend the Deepening Weekend more. So as it relates even to this subject. Yeah. So back to
I would love to, before you move away from our women's initiatives, I wonder how Robin and Sherry in particular, but maybe Maggie too, if we got them to comment about slowing down and what that looks like in their lives. Because I think there's similar things that come against for men and women, but I think they, like so many things, women interpret things and experience things differently than we do. So I'd just be, we don't even have to have them on here. It'd be great, but I just want to remember to ask them, what's in the way of them slowing down? But anyway.
That's a great question and a great point to whoever it is. What's in the way? I think let's end with that. So what's in the way? Okay. But come back to, there was another thought I had about breathing during the break, and it is in the Hebrew language, God is Yahweh, and it has it. And if you want to look it up or you want to explore it, here's what you're going to find: basically, that it had to do with breath. Yahweh, and the idea of even breathing and breath of life and being aware that we breathe by and through the presence of God and how he made us. And so, that and those deeper breaths, like your PT was telling you, and literally our bodies are wired to, if you're breathing shallow, there's likely is an understatement. You're stressing your body. You're probably under stress. Yeah. What is it to take those cleansing breaths, those full breaths that sip in a little more? I know there's meditative practices about that, and there's a reason why they're meditative practices.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And what it does to I just had it. The system. Limbic system, just the resetting, the oxygen in your, it's just all in that slowing down. So to go on those walks with God, to stop, to stand, to breathe deep, to take in smells. Can you pay attention to what your senses? Is there a breeze?
What's up in the sky? What the clouds look like.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all the slowing down kind of thing that you are practicing an awareness, an awakeness. Yeah. Our friend Tom, if he was sitting right here, is like, yes, awake. To be awake is to be alive. Yeah. And so many people go through life asleep. So if you're going to have a relationship with God, that's one of the things I believe, if not critical, that God wants to show and teach you, show and tell, is to be awake, to be alive, is to be able to use your senses, and it's that slowing down. You think about tracking something. You're taking a step, and then you're analyzing and you're looking. You're taking another step. Oh, there the track is. There the track is. So
just watched a episode of Meat Eater not that long ago, which is on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel called Meat Eater, and he was tracking for 2.5 hours. He was tracking an elk.
Yeah, I would just rather go buy down at the, let me just go buy that meat.
Yeah, can I just get some elk meat?
But that is, what if you were setting out throughout the day to really track down God and to be found by Him in the pursuit of that? That's what we're talking about. And that I wonder, I just don't want to live without hearing and experiencing and seeing and feeling the presence of God in my world, and me in His.
Yep. Yeah, it's and even to some degree, it can sound this way, even in what we're talking about, that there's a separation somehow.
Right.
So you're like, you're going to work and you're off to the gym and you're going to the grocery store and then you're coming home to be with God. He was at the gym.
Yeah.
He was at the grocery store.
Yeah.
He was there the whole time. And it's like there's this, yes, you have to separate time out of your schedule to slow down and be in God's presence. But what if we could move to a place where we could operate and do all the things that are on our to-do list, but still be in His presence and aware of it, right?
Yeah.
That's the invitation.
Yeah. Yeah. So spoiler alert, this is not to teach you how to find second and third gear so you can jump back into fifth gear.
Yeah. I'll be refreshed to throw it in overdrive.
Yeah. This isn't about, wait, I am so much more alive in third gear.
Yeah.
I think I'll just stay here.
Right. Why don't I make third gear the top gear?
The top gear.
Yeah.
And so when you're at the gym, you're in third gear. When you're eating, you move slower. It's just there's just an interesting practice. You don't have to count the chews. You don't have to chew things 100 times. But you are.
Yeah. Some of us do, though.
Yes, some of us have an internal odometer or clicker.
Now I can swallow.
But the slow down piece. This is available, and I think that the more I have learned, and then the more I practice a deeper breath, a getting in and out of the truck. Here we go, Jesus. I'm not leaving Him in the truck. I'm just, here we go.
Or meeting Him wherever you're going.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's with me all the time. So it goes back to that variable of my thoughts. Am I awake to what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling? So the practice of taking those walks in the woods physically and feeling when the temperature changes. Have you ever walked through kind of a warm pocket or a cold pocket?
I love doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a hawk, that's up in the sky making its sound, its screech. An owl, listening to the leaves move, or the leaves be stepped on by a squirrel. Right. So just to take in is this practice to I can drive. I've done it. I can do it. And it's almost it'll become the default still. I can so drive on autopilot.
Oh yeah,
I am, and when you bring the phone and it's alerting.
I've wound up here when I meant to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I just am saying I never text while I drive. That's bullcrap. Everybody whether it's at a light or they get their knees up under that steering wheel and they get two thumbing it, and using your peripheral.
Oh, use Siri, please. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, all of that. So, and you watch, I mean, one of the things that I've done just to even practice looking, I can't tell you how many people you catch just they're texting and they're driving right, and it's 40 miles an hour, and
usually
they're
way more judgmental about them than I
want to be on me.
Yeah.
So,
usually.
I know I'm hitting this heavy and hard, but it's paying attention.
Yeah.
And to move at a slower pace, to breathe, those are just critical practices.
Yeah.
To time away with God. And if you don't practice those during the day, I'm just saying, SJ, I haven't found it. You can't just shut it down. There's an RPM that becomes the norm. And, so that's why I think in a couple decades before, I could have my quiet time. But it also was something to get through.
Right. It's something to check off.
Ephesians, John, Matthew, the devotional, Jesus Calling, Daily Bread, whatever it is, and then now I'm off into the next thing. So this is just a big idea that I think has some really critical pieces. And I love what we said back in the beginning. The pen has an RPM to it. The pen and paper. Mm-hmm. Even if you're a Word doc guy or you're taking notes, even that has a slower. You have to think about what you're saying and feeling and writing, and it's very, very, very helpful to this idea of time with God, time away, and time alone with God.
I wonder when you were talking about you can't just shut it down when the RPMs are at 5,500, get them to go down to 1,800 just like that. I wonder, I started using a sleep app, because I need white noise when I sleep and all that, and it'll keep a sleep journal. Now, I don't know how it knows if you're awake or asleep or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it creeps me out a little bit, but I don't want to use the electronic version. But I do want to start keeping track of like, hey, I really slept well last night and I dreamt about this or that, or didn't sleep so well, and then try to tie it to what I did or didn't do in the context of being in the presence of God the previous day. Because I guarantee you there's a connection there.
Yeah. This is not as hard as people think. And I want to just make a big plug for this again. Like when we have a friend, Rebecca, who's diabetic, she lives that way. She lives with that. You don't have a monitor and a port on your hip.
With a pump.
She does.
Yeah.
Greg, who was kind of stepping into those pre-diabetic, he's worked. So his conscious work has been, I can stop this if I practice something differently.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there was diet, but there was a host of other things that came into play. I'm just saying, we're not talking about learning a foreign language here. You are doing this. Mm-hmm. But what maybe is the critical piece is, are you awake?
Are you exercising your will?
Or are you asleep?
Yeah.
Are you alert and oriented?
You can't exercise your will if you're sleeping.
Are you paying attention? You're on autopilot. And most of our autopilots are not good creatures.
No.
I think that's where the false self kind of reigns, is in the autopilot. I reacted to a couple teammates the other day, and that is not a good word, react. That's just rather than slowing down, feeling what I was feeling, thinking about what I was thinking, and rejecting some of the first thoughts that were reactionary.
Right.
So
you don't have to swing at every pitch.
So it led to an apology the next day. And so, but here's, dude, so that's such a great example. It led to an apology because I thought about it. Mm-hmm. I felt it. I replayed it. I talked to God about it, and I said, that wasn't good.
By the way, those are the best apologies. Mm-hmm. Like rather than, whoever the teammate was coming to you and saying, hey, Michael, I think you owe me an apology, which can stir up a whole nother group of things.
Or avoid me for 2 or 3 days because I bruised them in some way.
Yeah. So, but for you to say, yeah, that didn't go well. I need to go to that person and, say, I'm sorry. That's intentionality. That's practicing the presence of God in a given moment during the day.
Yeah.
That's that blending. Again, the idea that being in the presence of God requires this separateness from your day-to-day life. It's just not true.
No.
It's a great place to start.
Yes.
But then maybe I can get to the point where I can walk, dribble the basketball, and talk to God.
Multitask, multifunction.
Yeah, I mean, but he's there whether I have it or not. It's really on, can I be engaged? Can I accept the invitation?
So I'm trying to think, SJ, of how to 1, 2, 3 this, because
right, the what's in the way part, or
we'll get
before that
we'll get to that, because I think maybe some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but first, just determine that you're gonna give this some swings. You're gonna attempt to do this, and I know the morning might be the most convenient, but it probably is going to require you to move somewhere and in some space a little differently if you're going to add this, like your chair. I'm not a big fan of being too comfy in that space, because at 6:30, too comfy, I can I can just drown right there.
Okay.
I'm out.
Well, I am up and my coffee is in my hand, so it's not. It's not. But I hear what
find
you're
a
saying.
new chair, find a different space. I'm just saying, create a
turn
new
on
space.
a fan, open a window.
One of the ingredients I think that's critical to this early on is to find and be in a place that's beautiful. I think you need, whether you can get plastic flowers or you can get real flowers.
Oh man, Greg, you brought up Greg. He and I were on his back porch the other day, and we were sharing with another guy kind of some of this practice. And one of the things he does is he just puts up on YouTube. He searched for beautiful landscapes, and there's a million different videos up there with just kind of this chill music on in the background. And he said that's how he spends time with God, with that on a screen, and
it's great.
Just entering into that beauty. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it.
So I think beauty is an environment. If we were made in the garden, we might be made for the garden. We're going to get the garden back. Now we live in this war-torn space. So what if we could find a little corner of a garden?
Yeah.
And that can be in your home. It can be, on the back deck. So I think where you put
in a park.
Yes, where you put your heart, where you put, and if you can find solitude in that, all the better.
Right.
Nothing wrong with joggers and dogs and different things that are moving around you at a park. But if you can find a place where you are retreating away, I think those are huge. And then, so we got the environment, we got the timing, the environment. Those all matter. I think if we're on number 3, the third thing is, and if you need to time it, we're just talking about what would it look like to just focus on Jesus or the Father or the Holy Spirit or God for a minute. Feel what a minute feels like.
Right. I thought you were going to say 10.
If you haven't felt a minute of quiet, you will be astonished. And maybe you work up to a minute.
And you might feel astonished at how long it feels.
Walk in that space, and then in that minute, just do your breathing.
Yep.
For a minute. Full breath, sipping a little more, and then out. Now, not too much for a minute, you'll pass out. And I have heard of people doing that. But and then fourth, so the breathing, stopping, time that, and then move slowly from that space. Practice a slower gait. Practice, if you're in the woods or even you're on your deck, I'm talking about how can you engage your senses? What does the air feel like? Take a survey of your surroundings is what I'm saying. That's being alive. That's being awake. Is the handrail and here's what'll happen. Man, I need to really smooth that out. I wonder how much sandpaper is. And you're gone.
So maybe I should get that Trex material.
You'll be gone. So when
I got a coupon.
When you get dragged away by this carpentry is really good, and I need to call that guy. I've got some other things that need to happen. When those distractions happen, come back. Just when you because I think that being kind to yourself and being patient with yourself are critical then to at some point becoming more kind and patient to other people.
Sure.
So, and if 5 minutes is kind of what that whole production takes, that's a good 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about hours. But we're talking about calibrating to God, Him calibrating to you, which is always kind of right there when you do that, and having that practice of awake and alert, sensing, and then if you can, here's the last thing, and then we'll go to the wrap up. Ask Him a question. God, how are you today? God, do you have anything you want to say? And then pay attention to the flow of
maybe have pen and paper there or whatever. Mode you want to use.
That would be my encouragement starting point.
Yeah, I agree.
Any additions? Any caveats to that?
No, the only thing that kept coming back to my mind was. I've heard a lot of teaching on tithing, first fruits, in the context of money. But I think probably the most precious commodity we have is our time. And so there's something about the first fruits of our time being spent with God in the morning. It's not that if your schedule doesn't allow for that, it doesn't mean that the evening time is worse or better or anything like that. I just think it feels to me like there's an importance to starting out that way each day.
And I'm suggesting we do that, SJ, even outside of the commute. This can go on. You can drive to work in the quiet.
Oh, yeah.
You can drive to work in paying attention. You can drive to work. Maybe you have a sunrise coming up, because you're going down east, and you got to pay attention and then pay attention. And, you can, but I think that, this 5 minutes, that we're advocating for, it can happen throughout the day. It can happen and it can happen in the end of your day.
It can.
So
it can. And there's another parallel to the tithing thing, right? Because tithing from the Old Testament is sort of like this discipline you engage in.
Right.
Well, then New Testament giving is just basically be a cheerful giver.
Yeah, just give.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe it starts off with the discipline of the morning.
Yeah.
That would transition slowly into any time.
Yeah.
You can spend time with Him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's walk with God, what He shows you, what you learn about yourself and about your way and what's good. This will be rivaled.
Yeah.
This will be opposed. This will be challenged by the unholy Trinity, by the world and its pace, and by the false self, which is just one big distraction after another of different false things and lies.
Your wife's false self, your children's false self, your coworker's false self will all come against this.
Yeah,
right?
If I was going to try to do this and I had any influence against me, I'm going to unleash a few of those. I'm not saying your dog's possessed, but that'll be the morning your dog throws up or, rolls in beaver crap or whatever out there. And so, maybe, you don't take your dog the first 5 minutes, which will really hack them off because but you're how are you going to fight for this is what I'm coming down to.
Yeah.
And if you think you don't have to, I'm just going to say you're wrong.
Yeah. Straight up.
And once this becomes kind of your new normal, you might have to fight less for it. You might have to, fight on different fronts.
Mm-hmm.
But, what if when the routine breaks in your day to day, this doesn't?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you can do this everywhere and you can do this anywhere.
Anytime. So, yeah. It's really good, man. I want to encourage our listeners and watchers to comment about what your routine entails, because we are doing this, but it doesn't mean we're experts in the field.
Especially if you found something that's been really, really meaningful. I like what you said too about there's the day to day, and then, what if you took a half day every now and then to go get away with God? If you found a sanctuary that was more, you don't have to rent a room, you don't have to VRBO. It's not that. But is there a place that you can go and extend that time?
Mm-hmm.
Do all that, journal, listen,
Mm-hmm.
take a walk and be there for a few hours.
Right.
Or a half day.
And I do wonder, what would the world look like if more of us took a Sabbath?
Yeah. Oh, that's why there is
once a
Sabbath.
week.
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about the daily.
Mm-hmm.
The Sabbath is the weekly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the monthly and the annually.
And Caleb, hey, you can put me on record as the Sabbath and church don't always get along, bro.
Right.
So he's nodding, back of his head going, nod.
Yeah.
I mean, to get that kind of rest and to get that kind of reflection, nothing wrong with a sermon, nothing wrong with the foyer, nothing wrong with Sunday school. Those are good things.
Mm-hmm.
Those can be good things. But what we're talking about is after the busyness of church sometimes, what would it look like to, and I get it, if you have young kids, if you're a young family,
this really challenged.
But maybe you model for your family, hey, let's take a walk. Let's go explore the backwoods, or let's go look at this park. And you model, Dad and Mom, what that is to move, slower. Even a meal. What's slower food look like? What's these are hard things to do. Talk about being opposed, but to wrangle our families kind of into this space. I wouldn't start with that.
No,
I would say, man, go tend to your heart first.
Yeah, become a bit of an expert at it.
Yeah,
and then introduce it to your kingdom.
And then you don't need to tell your wife and children, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to take care of this. This is really important. Hey, stop hitting her. Get off that. Get off. Sit down.
This is time alone with God time.
Yeah.
Keep it down.
No, I've heard of men doing that, and never me.
No,
but you get it.
Of course not.
You get it. To step into, taking care of your heart, tending to your heart, moving more slowly, and then maybe even here's my advice. Even just sharing that with your family, you don't have to take them on that. You just start talking about stories of the sea.
Mm-hmm.
You start saying, guys, I got to tell you this story. I listened to these two guys. They're on this podcast. They're so cool. You don't have to tell them that part. But go and you bring back the treasures that have been given to you in this time alone. I've not heard anybody say that, my wife and kids weren't interested. I did that. I told them 4 or 5 stories. No, you must be I'd say you must be telling the stories wrong, number one. Or the reality of, and I was out there in the woods, and I began to just, have you ever felt the breeze on your face? Your kids are going to jump into that question.
Oh yeah.
Did you know we have 4 kinds of trees out back? And each one of their bark is different. Every morning I kind of go and put my hands on it, and I just think about God and how he made trees. It's so fun.
And they're so different. They could have been all the same. Yeah.
Dad, can we go?
Yeah.
You won't have to wrangle them.
I was thinking about dinner time and, how it's often just, sitting down and scooping it in. What would it look like, Dad, to take a bite, a small one, put your fork down, just chew it and say, can you guys taste that?
Yeah. I got a big bite of pepper. Or I got that was.
Man, that steak's delicious, you know? I mean, and just see what they, the stop mid-bite.
First my kids are going to go, what is wrong with Dad?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
But if you can endure some of that as you begin to practice, I think a lot of modules of sharing start to present themselves to you with the people that are in your kingdom that you have some charge over, of loving them and helping them. Telling them to do this is one thing. Showing them to do this is another one. But just talking about how good it's been for you, that's the best way.
Yeah.
That's the way that I feel like you could impact your family.
Right.
And let them know that you're going to go kind of take a walk with God and just be in the woods for a few minutes. I'll be back.
Okay.
Yeah. But, and then you start sharing a little bit about, I got to tell you what God, what God showed me out there, what he did. That's stories of the sea, right? And the whole, and that old parable, that old story, if you haven't heard it, is if you want men, and I'll say and women, to become sailors, don't teach them how to build boats. Tell them stories of the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want your kids to walk with God and learn to walk with God and to experience that time away and time alone with God, then tell them stories of your time away and your time alone. So that's kind of not the bonus. That's in some ways the purpose.
Sure.
Of all of that.
Yeah.
So.
No doubt. Well, thanks for listening. If you guys have questions, comments, you can comment below. I'm looking at that camera, but we can look at this camera too. If you got questions or comments, leave them below. Shoot us an email, exploringmore@zoweh.org. And if you would give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube and share us and like us on your other podcast platforms of choice, it just helps us be found.
Yeah.
And helps get this message out. So thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us for the Exploring More podcast. Get out there, get quiet, and get found. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the life of more by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.